So the tips and tricks that I plan on showing you are actually having to do with what you can do with the software. So the first thing I'm going to ask is environment archives. You guys doing them?
Yeah, now.
No.
No.
Do them.
Jesse, what happens? What happens when you don't do an environment archive?
We did a server upgrade, a software upgrade for SOLIDWORKS Electrical, and all my projects disappeared.
Oh.
So I lost more than month's work. Do the archive.
Do the archives. We cannot stress that enough.
Get it started and come back in the morning and start your computer. It'll be painless for you.
And that has to be on every.
No.
No?
One person can do that.
One person?
One person can do the entire environment archive. What we are talking about here.
That is fantastic.
What we are talking about here, you can set up a notification on one person's computer that will say, do you want to do the archive? Do you want to remind me, or don't do anything? All you have to do is have somebody hit this button right there, that archive environment button. That is it. Because once you do, hang on here, I'm just going to say do nothing here. And then I'm going to go up to this archive environment. What I am talking about is this section here, which is going to capture every bit of your software. I don't care whether you are talking projects, templates, the symbols, every library, every template, every configuration that you've got set up. All of it is captured. You can remind yourself however you want to. Now, mind you, I explain this when we go through the training, but I know people forget to do it. Jesse is one of those people. I can attest to the fact that about 50% of my customers forget to do this one step. It doesn't take long, but it can cost you in the long run, because everybody says, hey, it's an SQL database. I back up my servers. That's all I need. The electrical stitches those databases to everything that you're developing in the libraries. If you don't create that one archive file, that collaborative service is not captured. So that stitching is lost. Now, in most cases, as long as you have all of the files, corporate can stitch that back together again for you, or DASI can, depending on how extensive it is. Unfortunately, there are some instances, like in Jesse's case, where some of the files were no longer there.
Yeah, I had the projects that were coming with the software, the sample projects, and playing the sandbox projects just to learn the software. I had all those. But the production project that I put so much time in, that was gone.
Yeah, so I can't stress this enough, that this is huge. And all you need to do is just say custom and select everything. It's just one zip file, place it somewhere on a server, place it on an external hard drive, place it in the cloud. Doesn't matter. As long as you've got that file, you can then take it to any other machine, install the software, and be running in a matter of minutes after you unarchive everything, as if you never lost any time at all. Yeah. I had another company that had a ransomware virus, and it locked up their server. It wasn't that the clients were
Lost just the server.
Lost just the server. Now what do? Nobody can work. Everybody's sitting there. You're paying them. They can't do a darn thing. If you had that one file, you could then just put that one file onto every computer. They can continue working. When they're done, at the end of the day, archive their stuff back in, put you back to the server when you got the server back up. There's a blog called On the Road. It's on the DASISolutions.com website. It shows you how to change the settings from your server settings to local. It's simply called taking schematic on the road. I wrote it a couple of years ago, but it is still exactly the same setup. Shows you what you need to do as far as screenshots before you make the changes. Make your changes to your local system, and then go back to running with your server when it comes back up. All righty, so that being the case, that's the first one I wanted to talk about because, of course, that one is really, really important. So the next one I want to talk about is the fact trying to select multiple wires, but the wire mark is in the way. Have you ever tried doing that where you're selecting all these wires and the wire marks are in the way, and then you're trying to make changes to the wire style, changing it to a different color, or doing a propagate to a different wire style? Have you ever tried doing that? It becomes a little bit of a problem because when you are trying to do something like that, now I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this and open up this project here and show you what I'm talking about so that way you see it a little bit better. So notice right now I've got a whole bunch of wires. I can see the wire styles here, but maybe I want to change to make them all the same gauge wire. Okay, so that might be the case here where I want to make all of those maybe 10 gauge wire. I don't even know what these are. If I try and select these like this, I can sometimes, and I believe the new one allows you to just go ahead to do wire style. But if you didn't have that, some of the older versions, you do still have the capability. Well, let's uncheck that. Remember, you can use the control key to uncheck anything that you've already selected here. But up here at the top, I do have this show text, which allows me to hide the text for those specific wires. Now I'm just looking at the wires themselves to make a change. I'm not necessarily deleting them. I'm just hiding them. This, nobody really has paid attention when you're under the schematic tab that you actually have some of these other options here, like align text. Align text is a great one when you're trying to get those wire numbers to actually show up correctly, which is one of the other things that I wanted to talk about. So now, oops, my cursor is a little bit lagging here. When I right click and go to wire style, I can then go to replace the wire style and change the wire style if I am needing to a possible different wire style. Or remember that I also have that properties tab over on my right. Now notice over here on the right, I have my Properties tab, which will give me all the information, but it will also look at the wires, it will look at the graphics. I have those extra tabs right there at my fingertips. So notice here, I can change the gauge of the wire. Instead of being 3 millimeters, first remember I've got to always turn on my pencil. I think it is this table that is giving me the trouble. Oh, most definitely. All right, so now I can change that to 3. Maybe it's 4 millimeters, and maybe I even want to tell it that it is maybe it's 8 gauge wire. Now, of course, once I have done that, I simply hit the checkbox. That information has now been passed all the way through to all of the wires in the project that are those wire styles. Anything that is purple is different between those wires. So notice the color is different, which style it is, whether it's the neutral, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Those have not been changed. But the things that I have changed are just the gauge of the wire. All right, so that's the type of stuff that I am looking at here. So turning that on and off with this show hide text will allow you to be able to get rid of some of that extra stuff that you are trying to do. Okay? Any questions with that? No? Pretty straightforward? All right. Let's go back and look at what we have next. So the next one that I wanted to look at was, what's a passive symbol? You guys ever dealt with a passive symbol? All right. Very good friend of mine. Bill of materials, as you know, comes with every component that you put into your project, right? But what do you do with those symbols that you don't want to manufacture for. Maybe it's ground symbol. I believe Jesse's heard this story before, but one of my good friends builds lots of equipment. He's just a small little company. But on his panel layouts, he likes to add a figure next to the cabinet to show how big the cabinet is.
Okay.
That figure
There's a bond entity.
is a bond entity because he would put a manufacturer for that. He put God as the manufacturer. Now that's in the bill of materials that you've got a manufacturer for God that you want to have purchased. Well, obviously that's not the case. So there is this thing called a passive symbol. What those passive symbols are symbols that do not require any circuitry. Consider maybe it's a note that you might put on your prints on a regular basis. Or this man, which is just a figure that he wanted to put. Maybe it's the dip switch settings that you want to put on a specific PLC. Those types of things are passive symbols that you could still put into a library, but they're not going to require a component. Now, the software does have a few passive components in it. So if you were to go to the library and look at your symbols manager, you know that you've got your filters here. I would go to any class, but before I go to any class, I'm going to go to the symbols type. And I am going to go all the way to the bottom and go to passive symbols. So there are passive symbols. These passive symbols are here. I have a few extras from other people, but the bumps are one which we'll look at here in a minute. And I have some other ones. Twisted ground or maybe a shield might be another symbol that you might utilize on a regular basis. Those types of symbols are stuff, again, that would not want components to them. You don't want to put an ID to that whatsoever, but you want to be able to at least show it on your schematics and have a library that you can pick and choose what you're looking for. Okay? Well, those are some of the things there with that. So let's look at what the next PowerPoint is, which I believe I specifically said, okay, where do I add terminal end anchors? Do you guys use terminal end anchors? Jesse, you do. Do you guys do it? Where would you put those in at?
No clue.
No clue. Oh, Matt, you haven't been to the class.
I haven't.
You haven't been to the class. See, that would help. That would help. Where you end up putting those, it turns out that when you are in a project, Matt, you're going to have to take all this back and explain it to your guys back there at Mission.
I know.
Try and figure that one out. That's going to be a unique one. All right. Under project, you have under project all of the managers for the specific project. That is where they are located. Now, when you are under project, you will see that you have a location manager. Now, under location manager, what you can do is simply for each location, you could have, notice that when I select any location, now remember a location is just a sub-assembly of your project. So you're used to SOLIDWORKS, yes? SOLIDWORKS, you have assemblies, you can make sub-assemblies. Here we're making a sub-assembly of the subplate. That subplate still needs to be in the bill of materials somewhere if you are purchasing it. What you can do is you can go to the properties of a specific location and notice that I can actually add manufacturer's parts here directly. So when I go to the manufacturer's parts, now I can add the panel, the duct, the DIN rail. Those types of things that you would see in the bill of materials. But terminal strips are slightly different. They are not in the location manager because you are probably going to want a simple set of end anchors for each terminal strip. Where that is located at is in the terminal strip editor. So if I were to look at this terminal strip here by simply going to edit terminal strip, but notice I do have a terminal strip manager right there. That is just another manager but you can get to it also from Edit Terminal Strip here, Terminal Strip Properties. Notice I have the manufacturer's parts right there. Here is where I would add those end anchors. Now, by adding those end anchors in this location, they are still in the bill of materials, but if I delete terminal strip itself, because I don't need that terminal strip, I don't have to go back to my location manager to delete those extra pieces because it's part of the terminal strip. Okay? So that's why I do it in that directions, to make sure that that way if the terminal strip gets added, because normally you're going to put all the 24 volts together in one spot, or all the 480 together with one spot. So you really only need the end anchors for that one grouping. So normally you might even name the terminal strip as 480, 110, to make it easy to understand where or each set of terminals is going when you're placing them in your schematic. Okay?
So you have your terminal strip broke up into some logical sections,
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted end anchors in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Just modify your quantity on that?
Yeah, what I would do is just simply when you are doing this, so normally here I would search for the specific end anchor. I don't even know if I've got end anchors here. Let's see if let's just go to all and see if I even have a description of anchor and see if it brings up anything at all. Oh, look at that. I do have them. So here, what I would normally do is just add +2 for a normal set.
Okay.
But what I might do is if I'm doing more than that with that grouping, I would just grab another 2 and add that again. So, yeah, it's just based off of what you're going to do as far as breaking up those, especially if you have a long set, you might end up wanting to break those up so that you can always add more. That 20% spare can kill you. All right. Any questions with that? Dave, Joe, I know I'm kind of okay. Good. All right, cool. All right, so that's what you do with end anchors. So let's look at the next one. So how can I add bumps to my wires? For some reason, everybody's stuck in that old AutoCAD day where, you know, you've got to show the bumps because my people that are building the cabinet just can't understand a dot is the connection, and if the wire just passes through, then there's no dot. Sometimes the dot isn't big enough. Well, in the software, what we have is we have the standard pink dots for where wires are being connected. So if you were to look over here, you can see the big pink dots. Some people just don't like those dots because that's just not clear enough. Just showed you passive symbols. A bump is a passive symbol. So all you would end up doing here is actually adding, so going to your schematic, insert a symbol, find your passive symbol. That is called bump. So, and they are called bumps. So if I go to description here and I simply say bump and make sure it is any class, I find my bumps and I can drop it in. Now, make sure I've got my snap on. All right, there is a bump. Now, these yellow areas are what we call a wipeout frame. What that is doing is physically not breaking the circuit, but hiding it for you. If you were to look at this, that case, you would actually see, and you can add wipeout frames anywhere. The military uses this on a regular basis to cover up their classified circuitry, so that when somebody's working on it, whoever has access to the rights to work on a project will move the wipeout frame off so they can work on the circuitry. But for publishing reasons, they would then take that wipeout frame and put it back on. So that way you couldn't see it, but yet you could still see the outcome of the circuitry. We have this case called the wipeout frame, even in this symbol. Now notice it's a black symbol. You could make ones that were each color just so that they matched if you were so inclined. But if you're printing in black and white, it's not going to make a difference. But this yellow frame will still end up printing out as gray. You do have to do one thing. Down in the lower right-hand corner, we have the drawing parameters for this sheet. You would then right-click in that to turn off this check mark here for show wipeout frame. If you turn that off for this sheet, then the passive symbol will no longer show that wipeout frame. Okay. Yes, it is a little bit of additional work because it's not something that is added at this point. There is a software enhancement request for auto bumping. I haven't heard anything as far as progress on that implementation yet, but it is there, just because some people are very adamant that they need it. So, gives you the option. Hopefully, if nothing else, this at least is a nice workaround with this bypass circuit. And again, it is just that. Being that it is strictly passive, you don't need a manufacturer's part with this because, of course, there isn't one. Okay, let's move on then. The next one, what are snapshots? Jesse, do you use snapshots?
No.
Do you know what they are?
Basically, it's like a version history of the project.
Yes, it is. That is exactly what it is.
You get to a point where you like it, you can take a snapshot of it, continue working with it, and come back to that snapshot and jump it off as a new project right from that point.
Exactly. It is a rollback point, just like in your SolidWorks. You guys have PDM. With PDM, you have version control for your mechanical guys. You have that latest version, or you can roll it back to a previous version, correct? You can get an earlier version. You better not, because of course that's probably been obsoleted. But electrical, because it is controlled with SQL, the minute you make a change to your project, it is made. Now, you can always hit an undo button, but if you close your computer down for the night, there is no undo the following morning. Where you left it is where it is. So what you have here is our software allows now for this new thing called the snapshots, which is under process. And under process here, you can see I say take a snapshot and a snapshot manager. These reside inside the project. They are not a separate entity, but it is that archive, just like the archived environment. This is an archive of the project only in the project itself. So it's going to reside in this project only. What that allows you to do is have those rollback points. Because say you've got an intern or a new person that's working on a project with some of your other engineers. Before that engineer goes on vacation, he's handing it off to someone else. But he wants to make sure that his design is at least saved in case something goes wrong. He can easily do that just by hitting save a snapshot. And the minute that that happens, and that can be done even with the project open, all you do is say take a snapshot. And it's going to rev it, but not only rev it, but even give you a date and time that it was snapped. So that way you can come back to, especially the fact that you might have multiple people working on this. Here I'm just going to continue without updating the files. By doing this, it is creating that archive. It's putting it in this manager so that if you ever need to come back to it, you can. You can start a new project right there if you are so required. We already have the fact that you can save the project as a template, so you would have a new starting off point if that's what you are looking for. But if you are looking for something that is just specific to this project, not so much for starting a new project, but being able to roll back if you need to get to that earlier design. design. Somebody maybe got involved with the PLCs and changed the formula or deleted cards that weren't supposed to be deleted, moved cards that weren't supposed to be moved, anything like that. It's going to take a lot longer for you to repair that than it would be just to go back to a snapshot. So here we have that, which says it's already there. Now when I go to the snapshot manager, I have that. Notice I can, by highlighting it, restore it as a new project. It's not going to replace the one that you have, but it is going to create a new one. So you do have to be conscious of that with PDM as far as checking those files into taking electrical and pushing those into the EPDM, because it is going to come up with the same name, or it's going to possibly just come up with a name or your initial name plus the date. So you're probably going to want to make a slight modification there as far as if you were needing to push it into PDM. But I know right now you guys are still working on all of that stuff, so that hasn't actually happened right now.
I think we got the electrical on the PDM.
Not yet, but I know it's going to happen. I have no doubt.
It will.
I know I'm looking at Craig and I know it's going to happen.
See that shine in his eye.
Yep, I can just see the gears are turning at this point. So that's all. So know that this is available to you. So that's why I'm doing all this. There's really no rhyme or reason as far as what I'm showing you. It's more along the lines of what types of things might you forget or not even know that they physically exist. Because, of course, when we do the training, I can only train so much and not have time to show all the extras. So that's kind of what this is here. All right. What are connection labels? Jesse, do you use connection labels? No. Matt, I can't ask you because you don't use the software at this point. I have talked to some of your guys about that, and I believe Steve may know.
He probably does.
He probably knows what those are. Connection labels are your from to list right at your fingertips. So for any piece or part that you develop, any component, it does not have to be a connector. It could be anything. So say I've got, we'll look at maybe, oh shoot, let's see here. I am going to go ahead and grab this motor starter right here, and I'm just going to go look at it. From the go-to list here, I can see that I am using this in a couple of places on sheet 5 and also on sheet 9. Therefore, so I'm using it there. I'm also using it here on page 5. So there's a bunch of different pieces and parts to this component. If I were to look at the component properties, I could actually see that, yep, okay, I am actually using the one relay with 3 sets of contacts, and I do have a spare contact here as well. Where is that all going? And I'd like to have this in one little spot where I can say, okay, if somebody is panel building that, I want to be able to check that one relay to make sure that every wire that's connected to that relay matches what they're fabricating. So what you can do is you can simply go to schematic and use this thing called connection label. In the connection labels, we have a number of different connection labels here. So I am going to grab, oh, let's see here, this connection label. Let's just grab that one there. Oh, we're not going to use it that way. Let's just go ahead and grab this part, and I am going to insert a connection label, and that one has at least 8 connections to it, so I might even put it in a table type format. So here's one for 8 connections, 8 rows. We want 5 rows. I don't think I've got, oh, there's 6. 6 is good. Yes, sir.
Are all those connection labels?
In your software is canned symbols.
That's canned stuff.
Yep. Those are all canned symbols. I'm sorry? You've got 4 in yours right now? Okay, then I will,
No. You get more if you get in class.
Okay. There you go.
Rookie mistake.
all right. So you're connected to your software right now?
Yeah, I'm playing on my desktop.
Oh, no kidding. Through a remote desktop?
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so by selecting that connection label, now I am working with that 920. So again, remember that you have these browse or searching capabilities right here. So I can say 920 is what I am looking for. I can hit the arrow here and it will browse and find the unit for me. Now, you may not see this on the screen, but I am highlighted on my screen here where it says the 920 right there. You can actually see it where it actually has 920 is right here. It's just not showing on that TV. But so, if we were to go ahead and grab that 920, what I am physically doing is associating that symbol to that device by saying OK. Notice what it's doing now. This one is actually giving me some additional information that I may or may not use. This one is saying that A2 is going to this spot and then it's going to a second spot, and I guess there's some overrun here as far as wire lengths. What that is dealing with is cabling order. Think of a daisy chain. A daisy chain can either go from one device to the next device, to the next device, to the next device, or it could have this as the master, and one wire going to this one wire going to this one wire going to this one. It depends on how your daisy chain. Cabling order is available in the software as well. You can change how those are connected. Most people do not get that far involved, only because when a panel builder is building a panel, they know the shortest route, most likely. Unless they're using 3D electrical, where they could then optimize that route to get the proper routing order, to get the least amount of wire being used. So that's all I will say with that. That is a whole nother rabbit that I don't want to go chasing after at the moment. But if you are so interested in something like that, please let me know, and I can definitely work with you directly on that. Now, let's move on. Can anybody tell me, you got how long are we supposed to go today?
You got 20 minutes.
20 minutes yet? Awesome. Great. I always forget to check what time I'm supposed to actually stop or start. Sometimes it runs over, sometimes it's...
7.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. How do I add a watermark? Is that something that you would ever do? Add a watermark? As built? Pre-built? Okay. Well, this one's a little bit more tricky. Jesse, is that something that HydroChem might use?
Probably not.
Really? Okay.
When we make a print packet, we make 2 versions. We make the customer version and we make our production version. The customer gets a parts breakdown with our part numbers on, so they order from us.
Right.
So they get an electrical power distribution schematic. They don't get every wire and all that.
Gotcha.
Just the huge power goes to our panels. The production gets print detailed enough to build the panel to wire.
Now, do you rubber stamp that at all somehow?
There are QC check marks in our code. So it has to have my QC. We pass it off to the mechanical engineer for his QC, and our manager gets to QC.
Gotcha.
Once it
Okay.
has all 3, then it's good for production and or customers.
Gotcha. Well, one thing that one of my customers did, and I found this absolutely fascinating, what they ended up doing was in their title block, they created a layer. And that layer, so I'm going to open up this title block. So this is what the standard title block would look like. And I would add a piece of text. And that piece of text, let's see, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify so that I can add a layer. By adding a layer, what I can do here is I can add a specific layer. Let's just add a layer, and we're going to call this the watermark. And maybe instead of black and white, maybe this is going to be a deep green, or yeah, okay, well, something like that, yeah. And we are going to make that layer current at the moment. So that way, I'm going to apply this, and I'm going to apply a piece of text. That's all I'm going to do. And that piece of text, so I'm just going to say draw, add the text. And we're going to say that this is going to be final build. All right, I'm going to designate that, and maybe I'm going to put that right here. Let's make it just a little bit bigger. And maybe I'm going to even rotate that. Let's see here. Get rid of the snap for a moment and the ortho, so that way I can do it like that. So it's something that's going to be easy to identify. I'm also going to make that dark green. All right, by doing that now, what I have the capability of doing here, and I'm just going to go ahead and lastly, let's just save that template, or save that title block. Now, that layer that is available is where in this scenario? Oh, I might have to change it here. Let me just go ahead back to that title block because I want to make one more update. I got to make an update first. Got to go title block update. Update the title block. Identical on the current project. All right, so now let's see here. If it is here now, or if I have to close the project out sometime. There it is. There's my watermark. What I can do is make it non-printable. I can also just go ahead and show it whether it is active or not. So right now, as you see, by canceling that, you can see that this is, come on, cancel. You can see that it is now active on this sheet. I can simply, to turn this off, I am only going to the layer and I'm going down to the watermark and I'm simply making it not active and I'm freezing that so that when I apply it, what it is going to do is remove that until I am ready to have it there. So you can do that with any amount of text. You could put on 10 different layers, one for specifically for a final build, one for a pre-build, one for needs approval, you name it. But it's very easy to add these and then make them printable or not printable based off of where you are in your progress. Okay? So that's how you might use a layer to make things a little bit easier, especially since layers are printable or not printable. Okay? Moving right along. Using a different symbol for a cross-reference template. Our standard cross-reference template uses the standard normally open or normally closed symbols for the cross-reference. I have customers, though, that have intermixed these ANSI symbols with the IEC symbols for a normally open and a normally closed contact. Now, all of a sudden, what do? Because now the cross-reference isn't showing correctly. That can become a little bit of a problem Because of course now when somebody is building a panel, if you're intermixing those symbols based off of what you're utilizing, it can become an issue for the cross-reference when people are looking at it saying, hey, I'm used to the old style where it was just the wire number or the location, and then it was the location with an underline for a normally closed contact, or normally open was just the location, and then it was a star for anything that was spare. But it didn't actually tell you whether it was this symbol or whether it was this symbol. Didn't care. Well, being that our software uses symbols, we now need something a little bit different. So here's a way to solve that. The way to easily solve that is to use a different type of, I'm already in here. Using a different type of symbol. By using a symbol, I'm going to go into my library and look at the symbols manager for my contacts. Notice these two contacts here that are generic. I can put those into a table type format now that simply says normally open or normally closed. Doesn't show you the picture, but still will give you the accessibility of knowing whether something is spare, because the wire number won't be in this space, and it will all be blue, or whether it is being used, or whether it is not being used as far as being red or green. But all of those will now be in a table type format, nice and clean. It's just a matter of changing your cross-reference template just a little bit to be able to use these symbols instead of your existing template symbols. Okay? So that's one more that I have for you. Now, we'll just move right along to the next one. Using update data. Update data is a button that we use when you are changing the metadata for a specific manufacturer.
Okay.
So if you're adding more fields, if you're adding more information to a specific device. So say I am here. Let me just close this. I am looking at the metadata of this motor. So if I go to the component properties and go to that manufacturer, I have this Leroy Somer here. This is all the information that this has. Notice that there's a bunch of areas that are still open. As Hydrochem uses, they use a lot of this stock number and supplier name. It's Hydrochem. They don't necessarily use the manufacturer's part or manufacturer for publishing to their customer. Some of that information may not be here yet. Notice I don't even have a width, height, and depth for this specific module. This motor, if I were working in 3D, is going to only use a basic motor or whatever I've assigned to it, but I don't have anything assigned to it at this point. Notice right here under illustrations, there is no 3D part assigned to this right now. Those types of pieces of information can be added, but the minute that I add them, remember that this project is a copy of everything that's in my library. Those library components are my living pieces. The minute that I make a project and I start dropping these in, it makes a copy and puts it in the database for the project. It does that so that way I can have legacy pieces, because 10 years down the road, the stuff that I may have in my library compared to the stuff that's in my project, the stuff in my project could be obsoleted. However, when you're developing, there's those times when you want to add more information to those components. By doing that, what you are doing is you are now putting it on one instance and then changing the library. Well, how do you get it to the rest of those devices? And here's what we have is called, I'm going to go ahead and do that for this one here. Maybe I'm going to change the height, width, and depth. So maybe this device is, we'll say it's, I know these are fictitious millimeter numbers. These aren't anywhere even close to the proper numbers. This is the SQL. This is not the 3D. The 3D does not get copied.
Right. Okay.
The information from the SQLs, yes, that gets copied into the SQL for the project. Okay, so now I have one device and it tells me to update my catalog. Great, so I'm going to update my library. I updated this one instance in my project, but if I look, that motor is also used right here on 611. This device now, unfortunately, does not have that information to it yet. It is missing because I have updated just the one instance and the library. So I need to push that information to the rest of this project. So what we do is we use this process, and under process we have update data. Update data will take the data from the project and will distribute it through the rest of the project. And if you go and look at this, it will actually do comparisons for you. So I'm going to look at just the manufacturer's part and not anything with an ERP. So just those manufacturer's parts. Notice that it says that I have a couple of different ones. Here's my Legrand, here's my Leroy. I have 7 instances in the project, 6 of them are not correct. There are a couple of things here with a couple of other pieces. Those you have to be very careful of, because what it's doing is if you delete a connection point or delete a circuit or add a circuit or connection point, it will not just automatically update it for you. Reason being is obviously you're changing the circuitry drastically, and it wants to know which circuit is going to be assigned to which specific area, especially if you're doing a removal. So we'll go to next, and we'll go to finish, and it is now completed. So now if I were to look at that next motor and right click and go to those component properties and look at that manufacturer, that information has now been pushed to the rest of the devices in the project. But it only works with that process of update data. All right. Moving right along, using Propagate data. Jesse, I know we talked about that just a little bit, did we not? Pushing a PLC I/O point to actually the wire number, the wire mark, and then pushing that wire mark to the terminal mark so that they all match the I/O point. Is that something that, I believe Mission already does that, and I believe your guys have already seen that and have actually, actually they do quite a bit of that. So what you have, now obviously my PLC does not have the correct numbering over here on the side that I am going to be wanting to use. But there is this thing called Propagate data, and it's another process, Propagate data. And I do have a blog on this as well on the DASI Solutions website. But this Propagate data here, what you are doing is I'm going to add a propagation here. And the propagation that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the PLC channel address, and I'm going to take the mark of that. So let's get to the data. There we go. The channel address here, and I'm going to push it to the equipotential mark. So this is actually taking it from the PLC. So if I go, okay, now notice all these wires here are 0-8s right now. When I go ahead and say OK, notice they have now changed to the I/O address. So I only need to do this one time, and it's going to push the entire project for me. I never have to type in those numbers. So I'm taking this number, pushing it to here. Now my terminal, I would like my terminal strip manager to match that. So that way I'm not having these separate 1s, 2s, and 3s. Just simply doing another Propagate data. I can add another propagation. I'm going to take that equipotential mark, and I'm going to push it to the terminal mark. So now when I say OK, it has pushed it there. So now if I were to look at my terminal strip, let's edit that terminal strip. Okay, so this one is showing all of these different pieces, and it's even showing the fact that I've got some power going on here. But so these are all being pushed rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's pushing the actual information. All right, so with that, let's see here. That's what I have for you. And it looks like we are exactly right on time for being done at 7 o'clock. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. If you want to see anything more, any more of these sessions, I have these sessions just about every user group. When you fill out the survey, if there's specific things you would like to see, please just let me know what they are, and I'll show whatever I possibly can for you. All right? Great, thanks.